Okay, thank you for joining me today on Field to Win. Lisa Hampton. Love is selflessly authentic. Having all money, power, talent, opportunities now. I'm going to do a two-part show today. I specifically wore these New York blue. So that's New York Knicks. That's New Jersey. And this is our new fan, LIU, the Sharks. A little bit of blue in there for them. We are commending them. Congratulations on the Long Island University Sharks. I'm now part of the Shark Tank, respectfully. They're coached by the former NBA All-Star, Mr. Rodney Strickland, who is now Coach of the Year for the NEC, the Northeast Conference. I want to say congratulations to them. Look forward to them being the Cinderella team for March Madness. They will be playing tomorrow night, respectfully, in Buffalo, if I stand to be corrected, or I think it's Greenville, South Carolina against Arizona. We're not even going to have a conversation of how a 16 seed ends up against Arizona, but nevertheless, we look forward to them giving their best. I think a lot of them have slept on Mr. Strickland, forgetting that he has taken in his capacity as a DePaul University student, and he went 3 years straight to the playoffs, to at least, I believe, the Sweet 16. I don't think they made it to the Elite 8 under his tenure, but I could be incorrect and what I recall about his experience at DePaul University. That being said, I think they forget he is one of the few coaches in collegiate sports that had the opportunity to play in the NBA and also have a strong background on the collegiate level. So we look forward to seeing what the Sharks are going to do. But I tell you this, if they do nothing else, the fact that since 2018, they are now there on that dance floor, then, you know, it is what it is. I want to talk about the dance floor. One of the best dance floors I've ever seen in terms of design was the A10. I had the opportunity of watching that game, and I was floored, if you will, by the floor, the 12. And I thought, look at this. I thought it was the Atlantic 10 division, but I believe it's the 12. And they have one of the best floors that I have ever seen in terms of the design, Route 66. And so I wanted to just give them a shout out. I also want to take the opportunity to talk about March Madness and what it means to be an HBCU school participating, Prairie View, a game that I had the opportunity to watch. Howard University will be entering, as well as Tennessee State. Most of us know that Tennessee State pretty much puts out good talent. For those of you who know history like I do in terms of sports, you will remember the likes of Carlos Rogers, who entered the NBA, Golden State Warriors, back in the 1990s, a graduate, attendee, respectfully, of Tennessee State University. So it's not unprecedented for Tennessee State to put out that type of talent. But wherein you have Howard University going up against Michigan, there's something to be said, selection committee, about how you're choosing. And I say this with all due respect, I don't want to use the word one of the worst in NCAA D1 programs, but you have a Howard University and a Prairie View who do not generally, in the course of the regular season, play the talent of traditional D1 programs, right? Your typical 16 seeds, they're not selected in that. So to align these groups, HBCUs, with some of the best talent that there is, there's something to be said about that. It's as if you're predestined them for failure. I thought the same when I saw where LIU went. I said, you're going to have LIU go against Arizona? That's not to say that Malachi and Gordon can't do it. Of course they can. They're under the leadership of a New York baller, a street baller at that, who played in the NBA, Strickland. But that being said, why align them with that? So I looked at the 16, and it's clearly something that the NCAA needs to take a look at, how you are making decisions, respectfully, to align the top seeds against some of the lower scoring and lower ranked seeds, players, talent, respectively. But then there's a flip side to that conversation, one that I had over dinner not long ago, and the conversation is this. HBCUs are completely and always complaining about NILs, name, image, and likeness. How best do you get your name, image, and likeness out there unless you're going up against talent like you see with the top D1 schools, the Razorbacks, the Dukes, the UConns, the Arizonas, okay? If you're not aligning yourself with those type of teams who get media packages, how's anyone going to know who's playing for Tennessee State? Howard University peer review. So there is an advantage, respectfully, for aligning them in that space, and maybe that is the reason why NCAA Selection Committee did it that way on Selection Sunday. But if it's something else to it, then it's something that we need to look into. Before Congress right now is the SCORE Act. It's something that a lot of the HBCU schools have pushed back against through the Black Caucus. I respectfully only have two concerns. The one concern is ensuring equity and equality in meal packages. How do you do that? We need to know who's playing. How do you do that? They need to have media rights. How do you come about that? Who knows who's playing absent the media? What is the role of the press in letting the world know, sponsors know, that these are players that exist? And so we're looking down that avenue. One has to say, how do you best do that? March Madness, the NCAA tourneys. But for those who don't have the opportunity to get that far, what happens during the regular season that allows for them to get the media and the exposure that they need? What the SCORE Act is coming in to do is to regulate respectfully and differentiate these individuals being professional athletes versus amateur athletes. And where is the line in the sand, or does it exist at all? And for decades, literally speaking, a lot of us have been on the front line in an effort to be able to ensure equity and equality in having access to sponsorship, branding, and marketing opportunities. But how do you do that again? If you look at the number of African American athletes, particularly who come from public schools, most of the public schools are no longer getting the rhythm, as we would say, and having the opportunity to have that type of exposure. What's typically happening now on an unprecedented level, and it's been happening for years, is we're simply taking our best talent out of public schools and we're putting them in private schools. And when they're in these private programs like the Oak and the schools in Florida and some of the schools like LeBron James went and his son on the West Coast, when you're taking out talent and you're putting them there like the Scotty Barnes in Florida, then you don't have people watching what's happening in local high schools across the country, which is where, according to the High School Federation, is looking at numbers. And so when we look to almost 1 million football players, these are public schools for the most part. When you look at almost, I think they said it's almost like 954,000 high school basketball players, male and females now, combined. How do you get talent out of that? And then how do you make a decision of that talent pool, who's actually going to get D1 scholarships? Okay? By the time you do the numbers, you go from 954,000 to 17,000 high school, those graduating from high school who become seniors. And then once they become seniors, that 17,000 pool, respectively, I think it's 17 to 22,000, there's your D1 freshman class. And most of them are one and done, right? So what do you do about the kneels? What do you do about a SCORE? SCORE says, let's regulate it. Let's ensure that we maintain the power of being able to determine who, in fact, is and is not a professional. We saw that happen with a student in Alabama, right? And so that case went to court. They asked for a permanent injunction. The permanent injunction was lifted. And at that point in time, it was declared you are a professional athlete. You're not considered an amateur athlete for the sole purposes of playing in the NCAA. You're no longer eligible for amateur status. And that is what the SCORE Act could compromise. And so we need to be looking into that for those of you who are on the collegiate level. Next thing I want to talk about, Acuna. Acuna is Venezuelan. A lot of people thought Acuna was Dominican. Some people say he's part Dominican, part Venezuelan. We do know that the WBC finals consisted of Venezuela and the United States. A lot of people were concerned that Acuna, who plays for the Atlanta Braves, was very emotional and expressive with regard to representing Venezuela. But what is it to be said about individuals who can be born, fed, and bred outside of the United States, but then come here and reap the benefit to the tune of the millions and contracts for playing on our teams like the Braves? But then when it's time to represent a country of choice to play against the United States, Estados Unidos, right? You get to choose your home country. We're hearing the same argument being brought up regarding Jalen Brunson and whether or not he would have the opportunity to represent Jamaica if, in fact, the United States does not choose him. This is where, to me, the rubber meets the road. My answer would be no. If you're going to reap the financial benefits of playing for the United States, during your regular season, then when it comes time like a WBC, the World Baseball Classic, and when it comes time for the Olympics, you don't get to now say, I now want to represent my country of origin. I think it's distasteful, I think it's disrespectful, and I think it's not patriotic. If, in fact, we are good enough for you to play in the United States and represent a U.S. team domestically during the regular season, be it baseball and or hockey and or basketball, then I think it is soccer. Then I think respectfully we have to make sure we ensure that that plays itself out throughout the duration of your career. You don't get to pick and choose. And so for Jalen to represent a city like New York is a melting pot and they come from all over the world, and I think that's great. But once you make a decision that you are American enough to play on a domestic team like the New York Knicks, you don't get to say, well, if the United States Olympic Committee doesn't choose me for 2028, then I'll just represent Jamaica. No, then I tell you what, find a domestic team in Jamaica to play basketball. Acuna, find a team in Venezuela or in Dominica, and that's who you play for. But the minute you make a decision to say, I am going to value the American brand and play on a domestic team that is owned and operated by Americans, then you don't have the opportunity and you don't get the choice to say, after I've done that, I will now represent another country on a world platform. When we choose international players, respectfully, who do we generally choose? We generally choose the best of the best. And so now we lose that crop of athletes so that they can represent their country. And when it matters most, in terms of having an opportunity to secure gold, to let the world know who's the best, now you don't want to be part of us. Now you don't wish to represent us. And I think that's where both the Olympic Committee and the NBA as a brand has to step up. Under the former late great David J. Stern, who was the commissioner of the NBA, he had a voice in that matter. What has happened, respectfully, through Commissioner Adam Silver, is Adam thinks in a more of a global brand. Commissioner Stern mentality was think global, but represent local. Where Commissioner Silver is think global and operate global. And I don't think that that should be the case. I think the Players Association, through collective bargaining, owes it to the brand of the NBA being a domestic brand. Yes, I know that you have global teams. Yes, I know that you have China with Stephon Marbury. You're doing a great job over there, Strawberry, okay? But he's doing a brand for China. And then you have others coming out of Dubai and different parts of the world. And then you have NBA Africa. I recognize the need to globalize the game. There's nothing wrong with that in terms of branding. But wherein you now decide that we're going to take the most elite and the best players in the world, and then allow those players to choose to represent their home countries, to subject the country who pays you, who has branded you, who has marketed you, who has allowed the world to see you on a world global platform. Now you say to us, we're no longer good enough for you. Now you say to us, I want to take that talent and I want to give this talent to a country who did not offer and or afford me the same opportunities that the United States afforded me. That's a problem. That indeed is a problem. And I think it's something that we have to address, maybe on the collective bargaining side, where the majority of domestic U.S. players need to speak up and say, no, we're not going to allow that. Jalen, if you're playing for the Knicks and you're bona fide, born, fed, and bred American, this is who you represent. If the 2028 Olympic Committee chooses not to accept you, then they just haven't accepted you. But you don't get to take your talents and lend those talents to the team in Jamaica and ultimately win. And I'm going to tell you, I would love for Jamaica to win. Of course I would. But this is not about that. This is a business decision. And it's also about being patriotic. And there's something to be said when Acuna could say to the world that the best team in the world, happens to include him, an Atlanta Braves, an individual who has made millions with the blood, sweat, and tears of American season ticket holders, American owned and operated sponsors, and advertisers. We've created and made him a global brand. And for him to be able to feel as if he could take that brand and give it back to his country and say, now you're the best. There's something to be said about that, and there's something that we need to work on in terms of how we package these type of athletes that we're bringing in to the United States to play. Again, let it never be said that I'm against individuals who are basically wanting to bring some sense of notoriety to their home country. I think that's important. But where we have a problem is we're taking the best of the best and we're saying you take that talent and you give it to this country. And that country is now going to be considered the world champions, not at the expense of the red, white, and blue. I'm sorry. I disagree. But I'm proud of you, Acuna. I think it's great what you've been able to do here in the United States. It's great what you've been able to do in your capacity as a baseball player. But I think that we need to go back to collective bargaining. I think there has to be a bigger conversation from both the owners as well as the player side. And that's across the board. That's for hockey. We see it in Major League Baseball, and we also see it in the NBA. And it's almost like a threat when you hear Jalen Brunson say, well, if the U.S. don't choose me, I'll go to Jamaica. Really? So is that a subtle threat? If we don't think you're good enough to represent us on the world market, on a global market, you're basically telling us you are choose me or I give my talents to another country. Okay, fine. Wherein I think they do that, then I think there needs to be consequences. So well, how do you justify that? Back in the 1990s, Fame, y'all know David Falk, one of the best sports agents in the world to ever do it, next to 2 or 3 other people that I know, one being an African-American woman, Miss Jefferson, who started out many years ago. But what Falk did was he wanted to have East versus West. Today in the NBA, you have world versus the US. But he wanted to take Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and have the 2 of them to play against each other. And the NBA said, no, you cannot do that. We own this brand. You are their agent, but we own them as a brand. And so David Falk, decided he would litigate the matter. And it reached the Supreme Court. It went through the district court and Supreme Court. And in these courts being able to analyze it, it was whether or not he was attempting to profit off of the brand that was created. That's the operative word. The brand that was created by the NBA. So in other words, who would have known about Michael Jordan? Dean Smith, University of North Carolina, Tar Heels, 1982 championship with the assist from Jimmy Black, native from Bronx, New York, against Virginia, Ralph Sampson, right? But after that, who would have known? There are a lot of athletes who teams make it, who teams score, who do very well on a collegiate level, and then you don't hear anything else about them in terms of their NBA status. Case in point, come on, Stephon Castle, UConn boys, right? There's a lot of them. Georgetown players, Florida State players. We see it across the board. The University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Okay, so we see a lot of players who perform exceedingly and abundantly on a collegiate level, but then you look to see how are they performing when they get in the NBA. Respectfully, it's sometimes a little different. It takes some time for them to get to that place. We see the same thing in the NFL. A lot of people are expecting certain things from certain players, be it the C.J. Strouds, the Jordan Loves, right? And a host of others, the Commanders QB, right? And so we know that is true. But wherein David Falk thought I could take the best of the West and put them in competition against the East, and then I'll go ahead and market this. And the NBA fought back and said, no, you're not going to be able to do that. And this is why we created these brands. And but for the time, money, and resources that we invested in these brands, no one would know who they are. You won't be able to exploit that which we did. But what's the difference now with Jalen Brunson asking to go play in Jamaica? What's the difference with Acuna trying to go from the Braves to play for Venezuela and give them the notoriety, give them the global fame, give them the opportunity to be sponsored and the like, and put them on the map as the best players in the world, right? What's classic about that, respectfully? I believe the same legal arguments that were raised in the issue with David Falk wanting to present Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, both of whom he represented at the time, in a game, and the NBA pushed back. What's the difference now, Commissioner? Why won't you all push back now? Don't you still have some of the same legal issues that you can raise? Okay, I think so. So that's just something to be thought of as we move forward. And a lot of people are now speculating who's going to play for 2028. That's 2 years out. Should Kevin Durant play? Should Stephon Curry come back? By then, Stefan will be what, almost 37, 38 years of age, already has 5 chips. Doubt very seriously, respectfully, he's going to get any more, but does he need any more? Should we now look for a new crop of athletes to represent America on a global scale? Would you want a Kevin Durant? Would you want a Stephen Curry? Do you want a Jalen Brunson? Or would you want some of the younger players that are expected to come between 2024 and 2028, that 4-year group, and maybe 1 or 2 veterans who never had an opportunity to play the game? There was once upon a time for the Olympics that only the best of the best from the collegiate space, and then for years there was some pushback. Do we consider and do we go out our way to choose respectfully to invite, engage, and or utilize the services of professional athletes? It was an argument that was made that the Olympics was amateur sports. And if it is amateur sports, then why have we made it a game of professional athletes? Simply for one word and one word only. We wanted to win. We wanted to win. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so if in fact that is the case, that we want to do this because we want to win, then you don't allow professional athletes who come from different countries, who play domestically here in the United States, to then say, I will give my talents back to my home country. Because remember, America, the reason why we chose professional athletes to play in the Olympics in the first place was because we said we wanted to win. We wanted the gold. We're not expecting Venezuela to beat us in basketball, football, baseball. We're not expecting Puerto Rico to beat us in basketball in the Olympics. Remember the year Allen Iverson played? They got a bronze that year. They played, right? So this is where we are. Fast forward, throwing some history out there. What else did I want to converse with you all about? I had the opportunity to participate in the St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 17th in New York on 5th Avenue, front row and center right there at the St. Patrick's Cathedral. Why is that important and significant to what I'm doing? There was once upon a time where the athletes would participate in the celebration of the culture that New York offered, that there would be players from the New York Knicks, and even they would come over from the Meadowlands, now Brooklyn Nets, respectfully, over the years. So I grew up enjoying that, and so I had the opportunity to do that. There were a couple of others out there from the football and baseball, but didn't see any NBA players participating this year. That's something to think about. I think it's critically important when you're in a city like New York that we return to embrace it. And I know there's sometimes political issues with that. Do you participate in, but you can. You can continue to do that, Commissioner. Right? You can continue to do that, Commissioner, and do it that way, and then allow for them to do the Puerto Rican Day Parade, the West Indian Day Parade. New York has a lot of parades that embrace culture, but I think that would be important to have some form of representation from the NBA. I didn't see it this year. I did see someone out there, NFL was out there, Jets and Giants, you know, that green from the Jets, the Buffalo Bill Mafia out there, and so that was a great look, and also, you know, the Yankees and the Mets. Did not see anyone, Brooklyn Nets and or the NBA's New York Knicks. So I wanted to throw that out there. A little disappointed, and I say that respectfully, because it is a celebration of New York culture. It's a celebration of people who purchase your tickets. It's a celebration of people who celebrate New York. And what better way to do that than lending yourselves to that? The other thing I wanted to jump in on very quickly is what happened with Magic City. This is my first time being able to air since Commissioner made the decision to cancel. So once again, we want to thank the San Antonio Spurs, Luke Cornett, for being vocal on the subject matter. Of course, there were several other stakeholders, African American Juvenile Justice Project being one, and several others who spoke up and said, listen, there's an intersectionality between sex and human trafficking, adult entertainment, and professional sports. And so sports needs to maintain itself as a family-oriented. That is not to say that the CJ McCollum types who blocked me, by the way, it's hi, baby boy, we good. You can block and troll at the same time. Go figure. But nevertheless, you took an L on this one, but that's okay. That's okay. It's not a bad L. It's simply stating that adult entertainment should not have its place in the NBA, particularly when you market something like Magic City and against the game like the Orlando Magics. When we think of Orlando Magic and you think of Magic City, you generally think of children and fun and Cinderella, right? And that's what you think of, Walt Disney type, that type of magic, Disney. You don't think of an adult entertainment. So it was canceled. It was supposed to be this week on Monday. So it was canceled. So they didn't have the opportunity to do that. That's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean that the gentlemen aren't going to be able to watch the girls, bend it over, and touch 10 toes, right? So they'll still be able to enjoy all that busted wide open stuff. Hey, that's fine. Do you? Do you? Y'all gonna do you. And we okay with that. I think we are, nevertheless. And so, but do you? But it was great, Commissioner Adam Silver, that you spoke up, you allowed your voice to be heard, that is no place in the NBA. That's not supposed to be part of the NBA's brand. It is a serious issue with adult entertainment and what actually constitutes adult entertainment. And when you're having an organization like the Atlanta Hawks, we're selling t-shirts and sweatshirts, even in child sizes, with Magic City written on them, and young girls out there, and boys too, walking out and about in Atlanta, not being aware that this Magic City is adult entertainment. And what message, if at all, would those children be sending to their home, their schools, and their communities? So I'm glad that the NBA spoke up on the corporate side. I think that was important. Jamie Gertz, a little disappointed with you. I would have thought that you, as a woman, leading the pack, let me digress for one moment. So often when we are, as women in sports, is this mindset that we have to be part of the boys. You don't. Enough said. We just don't. We don't have to. We don't have to have the bop. We don't have to have the dip. We can just be who we are. And sometimes I get pushback from that. If that is who and what you are, praise God for you. That's you, and that works for you. But when you're in a corporate side or a business side, there's too much emphasis on us being expected to be part of the boys club. And what does that look like? And what does it sound like? And what are the outcomes of the look and the sound? And for us, the look and the sound, the outcome was getting along to go along. Well, as an owner, like Janie Bussey, the same thing I made comment about her, there is a time and a place for when women have to take a stand and say, no, enough is enough. I get it. We own a sport that is dominated by men. Yes, we do. But what's the operative word? Own, right? So you make the choices. You don't let the players control what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, or how you're supposed to do it. So it was a great response from the commissioner, Adam Silver, respected, appreciated, and they have many alternatives. TI still got to perform, and so they still had the opportunity to engage the Atlanta audience. They still had the opportunity to celebrate Mike Magic Barney, the owner of Magic City, but just outside of the scope of it being an NBA sanctioned event. And so, so as I conclude this episode today, March Madness is upon us. Let's see what happens. I have my blues on. I have my blues. I would love for the Sharks to be the Cinderella team, but guess what? If they're not, who would have expected Rodney Strickland to be coaching a collegiate game? If you know his history, hats off to Kenny Anderson, Allen Iverson, Rodney Strickland, Rex Chapman, Vernon Maxwell. There's a host of you gentlemen that when I read your stories and hear about it, I'm so happy for what the gods are doing for you gentlemen, and allowing you all to turn your lives around and allowing for people to see who you gentlemen can be. And there's a host of you. It would just take too long to go through that. But congratulations, Rodney Strickland. Coach Steve Lapps, Harris Truman High School. He saw something in you. I know your boy Ty was playing for the Gauchos, but Coach Lapps saw something in you. And he planted a seed. And I know the Gauchos did it, but your career at Truman High School in the Bronx is what did that for you. And so I know a lot of people want to associate you with Oak, but Oak's not the reason why you went to DePaul. Truman's the reason. That's where you attained a championship. And so I am hoping, and I cracked this joke online to Coach Lapps, I'm hoping you don't do what Coach did. When Coach Steve Lapps won, and history tells us, in 1984, Harris Truman High School became a winning team for state, city, and state championships. Before that, it was Walter the Truthberry his high school had won. That I think the year or two before that, 82 or 83. Why is that important? Because after the win, people looked, well, where's Coach? And ultimately, Coach went on to Villanova. And I get it. You win, you move on, you go. I think that's important for growth. But at the same time, I wonder, with the successes that Mr. Strickland has had in the 4 years, I hear a small team in the NBA is looking his way. Will he go? I don't know. That's about all I have to say. And I'm out. Lisa Hampton. Love is selflessly authentic. Having all money, power, talent, opportunities now. I had to come draped in this black, and I had to wear these shoes like that. That's New York Knicks blue. That's the Nets. And this is our now shark blue. I represented you guys. And I'm out. Okay.